Welcome to the It's Deeper Than That podcast. I am Sabrina Gray. I am your host and the curator of the It's Deeper Than That podcast space. I am super excited to start off on this journey. We are on episode 1. We are kicking this thing off, and I just am happy to finally be in the place of obedience recording this. I'm going to be really real with y'all. I don't even really fully know how we are about to do this, but what I do know is that in this season, I am done arguing with God because he always wins, first of all. Anyway, I be giving me my best shot, but God always is going to win. And at this point in my life, I am 32 years old. I don't have the time, space, or energy to be arguing with God about what he has already spoken or arguing with myself about if I can, who I can. I'm over it. Okay. So I'm starting this thing off by saying I'm not trying to curate a perfectionist, like a perfect space. I'm not trying to curate an aesthetic or for just the feels or any of that. I just wanted to create this podcast because there were so many conversations. I'm a hairstylist. I own a salon, the Curl Garden Studio. I was finding myself having all these beautiful conversations with women who sat in my chair. All of these things just that were so important to me. And I always felt like we were having conversations in private that needed to be also conversations that were had out loud, right? And I've always been a person who loved conversation, who loved to engage, who loved deep conversation. Now, let me tell you who I'm not. Me and small talk, it just make me itch. It is an art. People who can do small talk, my hat is off to you because it's just not something that I do well. How's the weather? Cool. I don't know. You were just out there with me. Was it cold? It's warm. I got on a jacket. Today I don't know. I have always found myself like in deep conversation real quick, real fast. And that is one of the beautiful things about being in the beauty industry is that women are sitting in my chair all the time. And the service that I do are longer. And so I really get to engage. And so I just found myself falling in love with conversation and just wanting to, curate a place that was where we can just come and we can be. And we can talk about all things womanhood. We can talk about the multifaceted nature of women and being called by God and what it looks like to being God into the marketplace and what it looks like to be a wife and a mom and sexual abuse and all of the things that are wired in our stories. I am a sucker for a story. Women sit in my chair and I'm just like, I love getting to hear their story and what they've overcome. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're here. Shining light on the multifaceted nature of who we are as women and how God wants to move through all of us. And I'm sure at some point I'll do the more curated intro and I'll figure out the perfect language so that I can explain what I'm doing. But there's a lot of this process. If I'm honest, I don't fully know what fully is about to happen. I know I'm speaking to women who are in the middle. I know certain things, but I don't have it all together. And I have been waiting and waiting and waiting, trying to figure out how to have it all together. And I have found it just does not work. It ain't working that way. And so this is my surrender to God. This is my coming out of agreement with all of the labels and the things that I placed on myself, all of the excuses, all of the every time I silence my voice, every time I go and put the muzzle back on, like I am done with that. And if I want women to be free and if I want women to not allow themselves to be muzzled, then I also know that I have to lead by example. And so this is why we are here. And so today, honestly, I really just want to talk about this idea of dismantling the prototype. And what I mean by that is a prototype normally is like the first of its kind. The original thing of whatever, right? So the first iPhone that was ever created, the first Tesla that was ever created, whatever. You have a prototype model at first that you present and you got to kind of get buy-in. And I recognize for Sabrina, I spent 10 years in a prototype model of myself that I created with my own ideologies, with my own insecurities, with my own things that I built up over years. I was a professional chameleon, baby. I'm telling you, I can blend into any room. Um, and I just recognized, like, over the years, the amount of emotional turmoil that I caused myself, the amount of seasons and situations that I feel like could have been avoided had I not created this prototype, man. And so what I did was I would find women that I admired, and I would take the best versions of, I love the way you mother, and I love the way you are a wife, and I love the way you run your business, and I love the way you do your makeup, and I love the way you do your hair. And like, notch by notch, I'm building out what I think a beautiful, successful woman of God is supposed to be, or whatever. And I look back now and I'm like, man, I wasted so much time trying to change who I was and trying to form a new version of myself because I just didn't understand myself, right? And so because I didn't understand myself, when you don't understand something, you go, 9 times out of 10, you're trying to put something together, you need to go to the manufacturer, you need to go to the example, or the, y'all know what I'm saying, the instructions that they give you. I should have went to God about where I didn't understand things or where things were confused, and those very things that I was like trying to change were the things that God wired me for, the way he wired me so that I can solve the problems that I'm supposed to solve, or do the things that he is calling us to do. And so I spent my 20s, I look back and I spent my 20s as a shell of myself. I spent my 20s trying to talk like, walk like, be like something that I was not. And it caused more anxiety, more stress, more depression, more performance culture than I had ever like experienced before. It caused me to be in a creative block. It caused me to, because I was not tapped into the very nature of who and how God wired me. And I was spending time with God. I was in church. I was doing all the things for performance, but I was a shell of myself. Now, because God is God, it wasn't like that whole time was not fruitful and the 10 years of my 20s were wasted. I don't believe that God wastes anything. And so I think that the very reason that I'm here today to start having multiple these kind of conversations is because I wish that more people were talking about things out loud. I wish that I was more vulnerable and honest about the struggles that was having, and not just slapping religion or just praying over it, and not speaking up when stuff didn't shift, not trying to figure out other like to really seek after God in a way that, okay, what are the resources and how do you want me to go after this and how do I just didn't do all of that. And so spending all of that time just hating yourself and constantly treating yourself like a project, at some point God wants us healed. At some point, we have to come to this moment. And no, I know that we will be perfected until he returns. So there's always going to be something that we can be better at. But if you constantly are anything like me and you constantly treat yourself like a project and always nitpicking every little thing, you're not gonna be no good for nothing or no one, because you're no good for yourself. Like I was, and it made me less of it. It made it harder for me to be a mom, a friend, a wife, to show up. Like it just made things so much more challenging. And so yeah, let's talk about this. Let's really get into it. I think that there always is a deeper, and I called it as deeper than that for a reason, because what meets the surface of a thing isn't always the story in totality. I grew up in Texas, born and raised in Texas, but I was met with a lot of brokenness. I was sexually abused from a young, at a young age, and it happened at various times throughout my life. And I a lot of stuff went on, like, just it didn't get dealt with, and so I learned how to move on while those feelings and things still like lingered in the background. And so by the time I moved to Washington State, I think I can't, I mean, I don't know, I was broken, child. I didn't Oh, I came here with a whole different name. I came here with an entire different, like they called me a different name. I think that is wild. I was adult adopted into a family. I was it, it the things that I did because I felt so broken and I wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than me is crazy. It's because I would fit myself, and I've done it since high school. Like, since I've not no 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 I've done it even in grade school. I was always trying to put myself under because I just wanted to learn and grow, and I always just would find myself clinging to women, trying to put myself underneath, like wanting to learn and wanting to be understood and wanting to be like cultivated and wanting to be. And so I just put myself in a lot of unhealthy situations over the course of my life, but my 20s especially. And I'm so grateful that by God's grace, his hand on me, that he kept me, because I don't know how. I don't know how we're still here. Um, and so I'm sure over the course of the podcast, we'll talk all about all of the different ways and all of those things. But today in particular, I want to just talk about surrendering your identity to Christ and who he wired you and how he made you. Because the only way you're going to get to know who you are and whose you are and where we set our foundation is by getting to know the one who created us. And it is of my belief that God has created us in his image and in his likeness, and that if we want to become the best versions of ourselves, the best version of God, because I don't even, correction, not the best version of ourselves, the best version of who God wants us to be, we have to get to know him. And I spent years of my life trying to be, I was a professional chameleon, y'all. I could adapt to any room, and it was beautiful to me at the time, but I didn't recognize that slowly and surely I was dying, like slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly. I was dying because I was constantly removing the very nature how God wired me so that I can belong. Growing up, I've always felt like, I don't know, I don't like small talk. I didn't want to watch cartoons. I always been 80 years older than I actually am, like and so I just never fit. And because I never fit, I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb, not recognizing that that was actually my superpower. The way God wired me and how he wanted to move, these things were so normal to his nature. And so when I start thinking about talking today and just starting off this podcast, I'm like, I am in a season of surrender. And that looks like the things that I have had to come out of agreement with, the deliverance that has had to happen, the way that I have had to remove how certain relationships have shifted and things like that. It had to happen in the manner in which it happened, because I just don't think I knew how to do relationship well. And I think that the way that I found myself to be loved and liked and getting what I wanted out of a relationship, which is also very selfish, was to become a version that was more digestible to people. And that is just what made sense to me in the season of life that it's in. And so I sit with women all day who, whether you are in, corporate America, or you are in X, Y, and Z, and you feel like you have to mold to anything. The only thing that I know 100% certain that we need to be molded to, or excuse me, shifting ourselves to, is really into Christ. Like, we need to shift our brain, our focus, and all that into who God wired us to be. I think from the youngest age, I battled with insecurity. I battled with being the one who talked too much. I just want you to know, we all had that little, okay, when you're in school, like, you talk too much, they move you around the classroom. And so I always had this thing, and I have been at war with my own voice for years, my whole life. I've been at war with my own voice, not just the sound of my voice, but just the importance of my voice, the necessity of my voice. And so I put a muzzle on myself. I I set I put a muzzle on myself. I can't stress that enough, of like, because I felt like I have battled with my voice my whole life, and you talk too much, and you're this, or your words were not as important. It was harder for me to come out of the shell of that I had created where I was very what I thought was right. Like I just did what I thought was right. And because I came to God, so I came when I got saved, I got saved at 18. I think yeah, I was 18, and it was after a major suicide attempt, and I felt like I tried everything else that I could try, but like this was like God was my last straw. I always tell people God pursued me. He had to been pursuing me because it came in a way and in a place where I was like defeated and devastated, and I was just done with life. Not just done, I was done with life. And I encountered God's love in a way that tangibly shook my entire life. And it was a feeling, that feeling that I now know was like the Holy Spirit and the presence of God. And now I understand what was happening. I equated to a man, not a man like a physical man in the sense of like a man, but like to man, like to human, to the human race. And so I felt like I spent years feeling like the reason I have this access, the access that I have to God, or the things that I need, it always had to come through permission, and it always was going to come through man. Now listen, when I tell you this, I believe wholeheartedly in honor, and I believe in mentorship, and I believe in the wise counsel. But for me, not but, and for me, it caused me the way I came into salvation, I think, and feeling like when I moved to Seattle, I got saved. I moved to Seattle with the family. And when I got saved, I felt like I was so behind. Like all these people who were talking about growing up in church and all of these things. Now, I understood and I knew church, and it wasn't like God was a far off nature to me, but it wasn't something that was on the forefront of my mind. I was not raised going to church. And so I think that while I thought that that was something that was detrimental and like I was behind, it also was something that was so beautiful about the way that I came to God, and the sincerity of my relationship and the authenticity of the relationship of coming to know God in my own space and in the way that God wired me. So when I moved to Seattle those years ago, I felt like what ended up happening is because I felt like I was behind, I grew this major religious spirit. And in that space of like growing a religious spirit, that's where that prototype came in. That's where it was like I have to look the part. I need to look like this. I need to sound like this. I need to be like this, because that's what these women to me represented of like what it looked like to walk into the kingdom of God and all of these things. I didn't want to do business for so long. For so long, y'all, I did not want to do business. I only wanted to do like ministry in the church because I felt like that was the holiest thing, and that's what like, oh my gosh, I mean, you really honor God, not recognizing the necessity of us showing up in the spaces that God, we one body, many parts. We have all have a unique individual call, and we all are necessary. If you go and tell somebody like they tell you like, okay, we're gonna cut your pinky toe is small, so we're gonna cut it off. That also is a thing that stabilizes and balances you. So you're gonna be walking off kilter for the rest of your life because you thought that small part was like insignificant. And I feel like that's what I'm learning coming into my 30s. The thing that I have been learning so much more is that nothing is wasted with God. Everything that God has wanted for us to do, every way that he has wired us, bro, like no lie, he is so intentional. God is so intentional. Nothing that he has done in my life has been by mistake. Nothing. Nothing has been wasted. Nothing. And when I look back at my 20s and I look back at that prototype, my heart breaks for that girl who wanted so desperately to be loved and wanted so desperately to be included and wanted so desperately to belong that the enemy got a foothold and for 10 years ran me ragged, child. I allowed myself to be ran ragged, I guess. Ownership, I don't know, but ran me ragged for that very thing. And it's so crazy to think that we have a God, Elroy, the God who sees us. Like God sees me. God sees you right now in the middle of wherever you're at. God sees you. And I wish that Sabrina then knew what I know now. is that even in the moments that were dark, and even in the moments where abuse was happening, even in the moments where it was so difficult, God was not absent from me. I wish I had known, like, yo, I could have still went to God. I do. Like, I wish I had known that in the season of life that I was in. And so over the years, it has made it really, really challenging to really build authentic relationships and friendships where I feel like I'm showing up outside of the version of me that I feel and I've deemed acceptable, outside of the prototype. And the problem with creating a prototype in the way that I created it, man, y'all, unmant dismantling, whatever the right word is, doing that, breaking it down, it's so hard. The habits, the things that I like, it is challenging. So even with this, like, I was trying to write notes, and I've taught my pen to be guarded. I taught my verbiage to be guarded. I taught myself to utilize everything through this stream and through this flow of the prototype. And as God is breaking it off, this is why I have to show up like this and just have the conversation and pray that as I move in obedience, like, things get clearer, because I have tried to write it out. I have tried. And because I taught my pen to be guarded, God is still working with me in that area, right? And so over the last, I would say, like, I think back in March, so we're in year 2024, March of 2024, I got off of social media, and I was just like, I think I just kind of came to the end of, bro, I think honestly, I was just tired. Like, because when you live in a level less than what God desires for you and how He's wired you, it's exhausting. Y'all, it is exhausting. And I'm not saying that things are not exhausting, even when I have done it God's way. I'm still, I'll be tired, but like the level of emotional abuse at my own hand, or started by my own hand, and decisions I've made, I have found myself, like, I was just tired, and I was like, listen, if you see me looking over there, it's because my first time recording, I'm trying to see the time. I have found myself like, God, I'm tired. March came around. We lost my stepfather in, I lost my stepdad in December. I was in the 1 Million Black Women in Business program through Goldman and Sachs from that point to, like, I think it started in March. And I was like, I need a break. And in that break, I'm like, God started to strip me in a way that I was like, okay. And then I started to see things with real eyes. One of the things that I did, in when you create a prototype and you pretend to be something that you're not, because you are pretending, you also pretend the relationships that you're forming are also in pretend, because you're not the authentic version of you. So the people who you are letting in or getting close to you, they're getting close to a prototype, the robotic version, your representative. I remember I was on the Mazzani team, and one of my mentors on the team, Evie Johnson, said, now don't bring your representative to the space, bring you to the space. And it's something about her saying that and it was something about being, honestly, being on the Mazzani team was such a freedom to me, because I had so much freedom to just show up and be myself. And it gave me room to discover who I am, and who do you actually like this? You're doing these things out of acceptance or wanting to be a part of something, but like, who is Sabrina? What does she like? Who did what, like, God didn't die for my prototype. God died for me, the real original version of me, them lashes that He took for me, the one that I deem not worthy, the one that I'm saying that it wasn't worth it, the person that I'm saying to God, like, the who am I to say to the potter that what he created is trash and I don't like it? And yes, we all have insecurities and all this, but I built an identity around these insecurities, and I worked so hard. I worked so hard to keep me in that box. And when I joined the L'Oreal team in 2021, after big fallout of relationships and things that just were happening, and then That's when I think it kicked off. But this last couple, this year, I remember I was on a prayer call, and I think my sister was like, God, you got to grieve the old version of yourself. And I have to grieve the old versions of myself, all of the things that I did to make myself digestible, all of the ways that I tried to be what I was not, all of the ways that I allowed myself to die in order to, because I thought that this would be the way I keep relationship. I have stayed in relationship, held people in spaces far longer than they should be. And I would rather my authenticity, my whoever, my like, I would allow myself to die over and over and over and over, not to myself in the way God designed it for us to die, so that it is, so that I can come alive in him. I was dying to who God wanted me to be, so that I can be more alive and available to the people around me. And that is scary. I deemed the lives around me and those relationships more valuable because I didn't want to be by myself, and I did not want to be alone, and I did not want to, and I always just wanted to be in a part of a family, and like in the way that I had it in my mind. I grew up like watching the Cosby Show and like watching, I had all these ideologies of what it needed to look like for it to be digestible, for it to be the right way. And so this is my journey though. I don't discount anything. Like I would do everything over the exact same way because it made me who it brought me to this part of value, to loving who I am. I wore my I wore this in particular. This is my Granny Odessa's what they used to call these house coats. I don't know what it's called. But I wore this today because I felt like I just feel like she reminds me of like my roots and like who, just, I don't know. She was just spunky and like, I don't know. She was just the most herself. Me and her ain't had no problems. Okay. I was the favorite. And if any of my cousins or any of the family is watching this, I just want y'all to know I have it on video that she said I was her favorite. And if I need to pull it out, just let me know. I don't mind inserting a clip here so that y'all know I am the favorite. Favorite though, right? Right. Yep, I am your favorite. Yeah. Right. I'm your favorite. Yeah. But I wore it today because I was trying to figure out what I was gonna wear and try to figure out like, and I was already in this praying, like I was already here praying. And I was like, I'm just gonna wear it. It just made me feel good, and I was like, she was a woman who just knew who she was, like, and she was spicy, and she didn't play no games, and I don't know, I just love my girl, so that's why I put this on today. I feel like I'm rambling as I'm talking, but I'm hoping y'all are catching whatever needs to be caught in this first episode, and just know that we gonna have a structure and a system as we move forward, if that's what God allows. But really today I want to, I guess, almost come to an end, like just talk to you about your worthiness and your value system was set when God sent Jesus to the cross for on our behalf, when he took those lashes for us, when he died, it deemed us worthy. And God knew, bro, that's so crazy. It's like nothing catches him by surprise. He knew that I would reject him by rejecting myself and rejecting the wiring that he made me, the way that the nature in which he created me to be. Yet he loved me anyway. And he still sees us. I was reading in Genesis, and there is the part where Hagar ends up pregnant. And I think, yeah, I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but Hagar ends up pregnant and she leaves Sarah and Abraham's house because I think she just feels like being mistreated or whatever. She didn't like it. And so she left. And she was basically their slave, their servant. And so she left, and because she was being mistreated, like, it's like rightfully so. I was like, my like justifications, like, yeah, she should have left. And she left, and in the middle of her leaving, God was like, no, Like, you got to go back. You have to go back. You have to submit. You have to honor. And it was in that moment for Hagar where it was so dark. Oh man, I'm gonna cry. It was in a moment where it was so dark for her, and she was in the middle. This is why I have such a heart for women who are in the middle. And I think at some point we're all in the middle, but like where it was so dark for her and it was hard for her, and she felt like she was being mistreated, and she felt like, I'm sure she felt justified in leaving. It was in that moment when God basically rebuked her and told her to go back, and she had to submit. Is that was in the place where God was named Elroy, the God who sees. I'm like, you mean to tell me the God who sees didn't come from a moment where it was like we wanted to be this beautiful, big, happy moment, and like, and God sees us in every season, but we have the harder time remembering that in those dark seasons and all of the times where it may not be the most beautiful of what we thought it was going to be, like God still sees us even in those moments. His eyes are still on us in those moments. And I think that that's the thing that I've learned. When I look back, God has always been constant. It was me who moved. It was me who didn't see it. It was me who didn't recognize that in dark moments. He wanted to still be present. In loud moments, he wanted to be present. And so if you find yourself a woman in the middle, a woman who is struggling or having challenges with just accepting the very nature of how God and who God wired you to be, this podcast is for you. If you found yourself on a mountaintop where you've accepted the identity of Christ and you feel good about that, this podcast is for you. If you find yourself in the marketplace, in business, and trying to figure out how to merge it all together and make it make sense, this podcast is for you. I know that the conversations that I want to have and the people that I will interview and the conversations that we will engage in will be ones that are necessary for us to shift. I grew up in a way when it was like, what happens in this house stays in this house. And we didn't talk about certain things. And I know that culturally we swept things under the rug. I am here to pull the rug. I am here to shake the table. I'm here to have the conversations that I wish someone was having with me. I'm here for us to have those conversations together, because when we sweep something under the rug, I think that we think that it's going to be this beautiful laid down, like little hidden thing under a rug, like putting, a nickel or quarter under a rug and it's just going to lay flat. I feel like the rug is like putting an elephant in the middle of the room and then throwing the rug over it, or your kids trying to clean up and putting Legos under the rug and thinking that nobody's going to see that in the middle of the room. You may be able to ignore it because you put it under there because you don't want it to be seen. But when I walk into the room and that elephant is in the room, or the big thing, that thing is that's swept under the rug, it just looks like a boulder in the middle of the carpet that I'm going to trip over. And so I think that it's time to start having real conversations. It's time to start being more authentic and honest. And for me, it's time for me to start curating spaces and conversations that are important to me. And simply because they are important to me and to the heart of God, and He's leading me in it, it's enough. Whether it reaches 10 people or 10,000 people or 10 million people, it doesn't matter. Simply because the conversations are important to me and and I say to me, meaning to that they may not be important to other people. That doesn't matter. Like, girl, it don't matter. The people who know and the people who need to be encouraged and the people who need to have the conversations, we will. And so this is just episode 1. I wanted to just come and give you a little bit of backstory of like who I am. Today at 32, I am the most me that I have ever been. I'm still walking through a process, but I am the most me that I have ever been. I am a wife. I am a mom. I'm almost a wife of 10. Baby, let me tell you something. I'm almost a wife of 10 years. December 6th is our anniversary of 10 years. And even this version of me is so different than I've ever been because it's the most me that I've ever been. So I'm actually having to explore love with my husband in a way that I didn't in previous, because I really didn't allow people to love the real version of me. And that is a whole nother thing for another segment. Probably when I bring my my man to the couch. Okay, when I bring my man. But I'm finding myself falling in love and experiencing all of it, like the beauty of it, the goodness of it, the safety of it. Like when you're doing it in God, it is mind blowing. Lord, it is mind blowing. I am a mom of two beautiful boys, and I have been allowing myself to be present with them in a way that is filling my love tank, y'all. Like I'm watching them. I'm slowing down to look them in their face and to look at their smile and to look at their smile with their missing teeth because they have lost, you know, they finally, have lost teeth, and like I just get to see them. And so I feel like I am entering into the best season of my life, though it is challenging because I am experiencing things in a new way, and it is causing me to have to not causing me to have to, God is forcefully removing the scales from my eyes, and he's making me realize where I romanticized relationships and ideologies and things and that was how I created safety. I'm a writer naturally. I am a creative, and so I created narratives, and the thing that God called me to, which are those things, also can be a negative thing in the hands of the enemy, where I created narratives in my head that did not really exist. And once the rose colored glasses are starting to be removed, it is really, it is not easy. But it also is so beautiful because I feel like I'm like experiencing life for the first time, experiencing love and relationships for the first time, like truly like experiencing them in like a way that is like charging my heart. I think I texted someone last night. I was like, it's like I'm being resuscitated. It's like I am just like, I just have such a joy and like an honor for life in the midst of some of the deepest grief and loss that I've experienced this year. I am finding such a beauty and a tangibility for life that I did not know existed. And so it's all good while it's very painful and it's challenging. And so some of the conversations, maybe we're going to be in here cracking up, laughing. Some of them, we're going to be in here crying. Some of them, it's going to be a mixture of both. And so I'm super excited to invite you into this space with me as I take on this space of having deeper conversations with deeper meaning. And I bring some of my friends, family, people I connect with on social media in to interview them. I am so very excited to finally be here. Like, to finally, like, I've sat down and record. This room has been finished since April, and it is September. Um, I've had this podcast on my heart since 2020, and it is 2024. And so I'm excited to be here. Follow us here. Make sure you like, subscribe. We are going to have a new episode dropping every single Wednesday. And yeah, I think we're going to do Wednesdays. Yeah, I think we're going to do Wednesdays. It's going to either be Wednesday or Thursday. You'll know by the time all this is released because I want to have a few episodes beforehand. But yeah, I am so excited and so honored that you are here. Thank you for watching to the end. If you are interested in certain topics or things you want us to talk about, please, 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 please leave us a comment. If you are interested in being a guest on the show, please shoot me an email at Sabrina at thesabrinagray.com. Um, but yeah, until next time, know that you are deeply, uniquely, wholeheartedly loved by your Father. And that how he wired you, who he wired you to be, is absolutely more than enough. And that's just on that. And don't let nobody else make you feel any other way about that. And that's on period. Okay? Okay. Period.